Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This question's answered video. What stock do you use on your AR platform rifle? Following along sort of with last week's video, in fact this question comes from the same person, about muzzle devices. Stock selection on the AR platform rifle is kind of going to be a personal thing, or at least it should be. There's a lot of great stocks out there, but not every stock is going to work for every person. And some stocks can introduce problems that you won't necessarily recognize until you try a different stock or until you work your way up in proficiency. I started out with the A2 style stock. When I was introduced to the AR platform rifle in the Army, that's what we had. We had the M16A2, then the M16A4, and then the M4A1. And that stock is very slim, very streamlined, this will fit everybody, you just got to kind of work with it. And one of the reasons for nose to charging handle instruction, which we've kind of gotten away from as you become more proficient, is because that stock was one size fits all, even if it didn't. Now, my go-to stock is a very streamlined stock, such as the Magpul, like the CTR or the BCM, as close to the diameter of the buffer tube as possible. So this is what I'm talking about, just for your general all-purpose intermediate range work gun. This is actually my patrol rifle. I like the slimmer stocks. This one has a slight flare to it, but this is what comes on the PWS, the new Mod 2s, so it's what I stuck with. The reason for that is just basic physiology for me. Because of this stock and because it has that slight flare, it doesn't force me to lean in on it as much. Where the stock breaks at the cheekbone, depending on your bone structure, your body type, is going to be dependent on whether you have to lean in or not. With a stock like this, I don't. I bring it up, it lines up with the eye. Now granted, I may have to turtle up a little bit based on amount of the optic, but the stock itself is not going to present any significant issue whatsoever that forces me to exaggerate my lean. Now, I discovered this problem when I was using the B5. B5 makes a great stock, the SOP mod. Problem with that stock is it has if you're familiar with it, it has a very extreme flare to it, and it forced me to lean in, and I didn't pick up on I was doing it. Actually, somebody else pointed it out to me a couple of years ago, and I was like, yeah, I am leaning in. And I just did my own anecdotal experience where I ran on a streamlined CTR, not much flared than this BCM, and I also ran on that SOP mod, and I found that on the SOP mod stock, I was getting on the optic just a little slower. Of course, I measured that by shots at the same distance on the timer, just to figure out where I was. A little analytical, I know, but tenths of a second or fractions of a second can matter, and getting the optic mounted, getting my eye behind it as fast as possible is obviously something that's going to be very beneficial, something that's very important to me. So I do get really analytical when it comes to stock selection. So this is what I was talking about, that flared stock style. This is another Magpul. And I know you're saying, hey, I thought you just said you don't use those stocks. And there is a caveat to that because, you know, that always is not always the case. On a precision gun or a precision platform, a gun that is not going to be a default standing gun, something I might lay in a prone or sitting or any kind of other unorthodox shooting position where I want to stabilize the gun as much as possible, I do use the flared stocks because they help stabilize my head behind the optic for long periods of time, which helps prevent fatigue. This isn't a stock I would use, like I said, on just a general purpose gun, but this platform right here, this 12-inch gun, is a Precision 223, and any of my other precision guns in the AR platform are also going to have the flared stocks for that reason. Of course, this was just about me and my stock selection, but hopefully I gave some good advice on those of you who are like thinking about, do I need a new stock? Think about your technique, think about your consistent placement, think about are you getting your head in the same place every single time, think about your length of pull, and all the other ergonomics that go into the gun, and then look at, are you actually leaning in just a little bit to get your eye behind that optic, or does the stock I guess benefit your bone structure, benefit the way that you mount the gun, benefit where the rifle sits against your shoulder. We want it to be positioned in neutral as possible. We want the rifle to be in a position and the stock to allow a position where we don't have to move our head around a whole lot when we actually mount the gun. It should come right up into the cheek and you're good to go. If you got to lean over a little bit, see if you can try somebody else's stock that has a slightly more or slightly less flare, depending on your bone structure, to allow for you to get your eye behind the optic without any undue movement. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics, training accordingly.